Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, I want to go over some news and notes regarding the last couple of Toronto Maple Leaf games and highlight some individual players and also look ahead a little bit because they've won 13 out of their last 15 games. The main story going into tonight's game, other than the fact that they were playing James Reimer and other than the fact that Joseph Woll was getting the start, was that Ondrej Kase was not going to play. But if you read what Sheldon Keefe had to say about Kase not playing in tonight's game, it doesn't sound too serious. He was at the rink, in their meetings, lifting weights, working out. Just seems more precautionary for a guy who's had a lengthy injury history. And with the Leafs having won 12 out of their last 14 heading into tonight's game against the San Jose Sharks, there's not really a reason to push Ondrej Kase. But David Kampf did play in this one after leaving early in the first period on Wednesday night's game against the LA Kings. He got clipped up high. It looked really awkward where it could have been his head, his neck, his arm, his shoulder. He fell kind of awkwardly afterwards, but whatever it was, he looked okay in this one. And you can see how valuable a guy like Kampf is to this team by just looking at how blended up the lines were after he departed with that injury. Guys like Nylander were playing the center. He was being double shifted. Kampf just takes so much defensive responsibility away from guys like Matthews and Tavares, and that frees them up to do the things that they do best, which is score goals. If you want to take a look at the underlying numbers from this game, the Sharks led in almost every category. The shot attempts, the actual shots, the scoring chances, the high danger shot attempts, the expected goals. But the Maple Leafs also went up really early in this game, and throughout the first and second periods, I wasn't really worried. And you'd think that the feeling would be at least a little bit nervous with a guy like Joseph Woll getting his third career NHL start. And I know that his last one was a shutout, but his first one was against the Sabres, and that looked really rocky early on. And like I said, throughout the first and the second period, wasn't too worried. It wasn't until about midway through the third period when the Sharks started to pour it on for a couple of minutes, but when Woll was tested in this game, there was a breakaway in the first period even, he stood tall. We'll talk about Joseph Woll and the backup situation a little bit later on in the video, but for now, this quote after the game from Wayne Simmonds was absolutely ruthless, who, with the injury to Ondrej Kase, was playing up on that third line with Nick Ritchie and David Kampf, and he didn't disappoint. He was involved in that first period scrum where Nick Ritchie was in front of the net and a bunch of Sharks players just jumped on him. He had that really nice redirect goal, which is awesome to see because if you look at where this guy ranks in terms of scoring chances this year, yeah, it's about time that he gets a couple of bounces going his way. Out of over 400 forwards to play at least 100 minutes at 5-on-5 so far this year, Wayne Simmonds ranks 40th in terms of scoring chances for per 60. I know that for Maple Leaf fans, discussing scoring opportunities can be kind of nauseating because they don't really do anything for you, but to see him just have 2 goals in 21 games so far for the amount of time that he spends around the other team's net, and just by the chances that we've seen him get, he could easily have 3 or 4 more, and that would be believable. And for last year's team, when he went down to injury, it just seemed like they were missing something, either on the ice or on the bench or in the room, because we know that this year, Wayne Simmonds was the one who stood up in the intermission and gave that speech that got the team going in the right direction in that game against the Blackhawks where they were down 2-0 after the first period. And last year's Wayne Simmonds can't hold a candle to this year's in terms of how good he's been. Whatever he did in the offseason to get his body ready, he's just been getting better and better and better as the season has gone on. And then we have this quote from Jason Spezza after Wednesday night's game discussing on some things that Sheldon Keefe worked on in terms of the team's offense. Volume at the net, I think layers, just different concepts of how to kind of get sticks open and kind of becoming downhill on the puck. Where's that sound familiar? You know what? Roll the tape. When the Maple Leafs do get set up in the offensive zone, because so many of their shots are coming from this one area, what the defending team is doing, or what they should be doing anyway, is just collapsing around the slot in the front of the net and taking those passing lanes away. But because the Maple Leafs are still able to get off such a high volume of shots, they're able to get those passes through. But when they do, because there's so many players standing here, their shooters have less time and less space to work with. We won't roll the tape for the times that I've been wrong because we'll be here too long. But nice to know that when I'm watching the game and I'm looking at things that I'm cluing in on things that they are as well. We know what it looks like when the Maple Leafs offense is trying to force something that obviously isn't working. But when they're using the entire offensive zone like they have been the last couple of games, and when they're utilizing different ways to get the puck to the area where they want to, which is that slot area, they're dangerous. They're dangerous, especially last Sunday night's game against the Islanders, where Nick Ritchie was first in on the forecheck, won the puck back, and they were able to get a sweet feed over to Ondrej Kase to score a goal. Or it's Mitch Marner charging in hard towards the net and getting a goal. Or it's Alex Kerfoot doing the same thing off the rush. It was really nice to see the Maple Leafs utilize more speed in Wednesday's game against the Kings. Speaking of that game against the Kings, it's another example of the Leafs going up early, and they led by a large margin in this game, and the Kings just had no pushback in terms of the shot attempts, the actual shots, the scoring chances, the quality of those chances. It's almost like the Leafs are playing full 60-minute games, and they've done this quite a few times over this stretch where they've won 13 out of their last 15. They did it against the Rangers, they did it against the Predators, they did it against the Flyers. Man, I can't remember a time in the last 2 or 3 years where the Leafs have played like this. When the other team gives them time and space, they pounce on it. But when they don't, they are grinding out wins in the least likely fashion that you could possibly imagine this team doing. I don't even really want to touch on this because the team is so much fun right now, and to draw out a negative kind of feels like a buzzkill. But the team needs to figure out what to do with both Jake Muzzin and Justin Holl, whether it's together or apart. This was the team shutdown pairing last year, and they were effective. And the numbers when they're together this year aren't necessarily that bad. They have been the last couple of games, but they've been better when they've been apart. They just don't look comfortable, and the decision making is very questionable when they're together, and the other team is generating a lot against them. And Justin Holl had a play in this game where he pinched in pretty hard and drove the net, and it was actually a pretty good scoring opportunity, but slipping and sliding, not being able to find an edge afterwards, and he's been knocked over a lot this year, and really easily. The play went the other way, and Joseph Woll came out aggressively and ended up flipping the puck up over the glass. A play where both guys didn't really look that great. There was another play later on in the game where he was backpedaling with the puck in his own zone, and it just flipped up over his stick. He couldn't handle it, and the Leafs got hemmed in their own zone, and it created chaos where there was a couple of scoring opportunities. And you got to feel for his line mates that are out there, because it just looks like he's chasing the game, and we don't really know what's going on, other than James Myrtle reported earlier in the year that he was sick, period. Didn't elaborate on it any more than that. And he came into training camp this year about 7 or 8 pounds lighter compared to last year's training camp. To me, it kind of feels similar to what Alex Kerfoot was going through in the 1920 season, where Babcock was the coach for the first 20 games or so, and then he broke his jaw, had a concussion, and never really caught back up with things. But there was the stoppage and then the bubble playoffs, and he was buzzing in that Columbus series. I don't know if Justin Holl just needs a little bit of time off. I don't know if that's why he was being healthy scratched a lot earlier on in the year, hoping that he would get back up to speed. I don't know what the solution is here, but they're going to have to make a decision soon. Because when Peter Mrazek and Ilya Mikheyev come back from injury, they will be over the salary cap, meaning that they'll either have to deal someone or place somebody on waivers. We don't really know who that is right now. I mean, probably Pierre Engvall, because he's in the coach's doghouse all the time because of his questionable decision making, and you don't know when he's going to turn into an absolute pumpkin, is what I said a couple of videos ago, and just forget how to play hockey. But it could be a defenseman, because that's what's been rumored all season pretty much for the Leafs, that they were looking to move one of their defensemen, either Justin Holl or Travis Dermott. Elliot Friedman saying that he doesn't think that it's Justin Holl, maybe Dermott. I mean, he's been scratched for the last 4 games. Now, I said earlier in the video that we would touch on the Leafs backup situation, and I was asked on Twitter who I thought that the second goalie would be after Mrazek comes back from injury. I don't think that they can afford to carry 3 goalies. So just by default, Mrazek, but I think that it should be. Joseph Woll in 3 starts so far this year has been better than Michael Hutchison, and that's great. That'll do. Up on the screen right now are goal save above expected numbers over the last 3 seasons for Maple Leaf goalies. And I think it's important to remember what's true of fellow countryman Andre Kasha is also true of Peter Mrazek. Yes, they do have a past full of injuries, but when they are healthy and they are able to play, they're pretty damn good. I know that we haven't seen that from him in the 3 periods that he's played so far this year, but to say that the Leafs need to dump him or that this signing has been a failure so far, I think that's a bit reactionary. Because if you go back, if you want to watch the video that I did, then I'll leave that linked above the screen and at the end, of all the goalies that were available this summer, there were pros and cons to every one of them, and Mrazek had the best numbers out of all the guys that were available. So to say that they should have done this or they should have done that, it's just hindsight. And just to touch on Nick Ritchie here really quickly, because it was a topic of discussion in this game, and I feel like we talk about him every other video or so, I've liked his effort the last couple of weeks. I've liked his involvement on that line with Kampf and Kasha. The penalties are a deal breaker for me, because I feel like they're blatant enough that they're not just subtle little jabs that he's going to get away with come playoff time. You're not going to get away with taking a guy's helmet off or slashing a guy going off on a line change. But like we saw in this game and others, where he can be a physical presence, whether it's starting a scrum after a whistle in front of the net or throwing a big hit or being first on the forecheck, I want to see how he plays in games against the Florida Panthers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Boston Bruins, games that can maybe get a bit chippier and more physical, because the Leafs don't really have a lot of that. If he's bad and non-existent in those games, I don't know what we're doing. But that's going to be the end of this video, guys. Let me know what your thoughts and opinions are down in the comment section below, and make sure to like the video if you did like, and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, I'll see you a couple of days from now.